Welcome to the West London Business Company Spotlight Series, sharing stories from the UK's global gateway. We are the West London experts, and we provide leadership for the world's most connected place to catalyse action for people and planet. Throughout this series, we will be delving into West London businesses to find out how they have grown, the support the West London business has provided, and what we can do to support them further. West London has a rich cultural history and is home to makers, developers, educators, retailers, and so much more. Doing business in West London is great, and we want to make it greater. I'm your host, Amelia Grant, and this is the West London Business Company Spotlight. My guest today is Joyce Macfarlane of Selfsense, an holistic change management consultancy based in Twickenham that supports executive teams and business leaders to be the best they can be through coaching, mentoring, and mediation. Joyce has been involved with West London business since 1997, nearly a quarter of a century, and joining initially as a member of WLB Chamber of Commerce, but later chairing the West London HR network. Joyce has worked with some of West London's largest organisations to consult on best practice in people and change management. Joyce joined our board in 2005 and is often found at our networking events throughout the year. An eclectic career starting as a pharmaceutical researcher with Pfizer and SmithKline, a lecturer, teacher and deputy head teacher in further education institutes and secondary schools for 24 years plus, Joyce sought to broaden her career further in change management in senior leadership development roles at BP, Lang, the NHS, the BBC and UCL. Joyce brings ideas and styles to the table from a wide range of sources with knowledge and experience in business and change management, and she joins me now. Hello, Joyce. How are you today?
Happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, so after that fantastic introduction, Joyce, you seem to have done so many different things. I'd like for you to tell us a little bit more about Selfsense, why you started the business in the first place, and the types of work you have done and are doing at the moment.
Well, I changed the name of the original company I started back in 1995 to Selfsense. Because of the experiences I noted and the types of work I was being called in to do, and what I observed with working with top teams, which was the focus really, in order to get the organisation to go through the sort of unprecedented changes that they were sort of experiencing. What I noticed was how important soft skills were in delivering effective organizational skills. Again, talking about soft skills, one can say, what is this about? What do we mean? Examples, of course, it's a combination of people skills, social skills, communication skills, character, personality traits, attitudes, career attributes, and emotional intelligence. So certainly for me, the focus of Selfsense is about coaching and really coaching the leader of the organisation or the executive group, then encouraging them to have their teams facilitated by me and really doing a group facilitation, but that's around the business and the business issues that they're dealing with, and for them actually to share their thinking. Because what I've discovered is through being able to be aware of what we're thinking and what our thoughts are, and then actually to be able to share them, certainly in a team, it's so important because it's from this sharing, people can identify where they've got common ways approaching things and where they differ. And actually the other aspect of it is how conflict, I believe, in the situation where there is diversity of thought, diversity of people, that then people can work together to collaborate. And so that's another thing in order to resolve those conflicts, in order to improve the performance of individuals and the organisation, and of course for the clients that they're working for.
Yeah. So in your 25 plus year working life, Joyce, what do you think is the biggest change that you have noticed in terms of some of the corporate skills requirements that you've seen?
Well, I would say the biggest change has been around, apart from using the word saying, well, our people are our most important asset, and sort of talking about, the terms of human resources, is one of recognizing that humans really, we all have very important contributions to make to an organization. However, we bring our emotions into that. So for me, one of the biggest changes where the terminology was being professional meant that you left your emotions about anything at work outside, and emotional issues dealt with other things. Now, what I certainly, those who I work with, have recognized that actually our emotions, our emotional intelligence, our resilience to challenges require us to actually pay attention to those emotions, because through paying attention to them and dealing with the sort of thought process that emotions can provoke, then it's easier to resolve some of the challenges. And for me also, the biggest thing as well is in what I've been doing is where people often thought coaching was about you weren't doing very well and therefore you needed to be coached in order to perform better. My analogy was that actually with sports in the area of sports, for example, Novak Djokovic, who has this stellar tennis career, his game dropped whenever he didn't have a coach.
So Joyce, tell me more about the types of work that you've been doing over the last sort of 15, 20 years, and whether you saw any marked difference in terms of what the pandemic brought to bear.
Okay, well, related to types of work, I think to illustrate this, I will take the most recent work I was doing prior to the pandemic, because that brings together very much aspects of the work I did with different companies, but brought them together. And so this was with an innovative pharma business that had been going for 10 years. They'd had an increase, quite a significant increase in investment, which provided quite a large amount of opportunities. But because their staff numbers were 17, they knew that in the next 12 to 18 months, there was going to be a huge amount of change, taking on staff, which in fact they took up, increased to 52. This meant, of course, employing people who had come from other organizations to managerial roles, them having to establish in an infrastructure which was required for that size of company. And so the work I did with them really involved one-to-one coaching with the executive team. But this company also said, well, stress would be sort of experienced by other staff members. So therefore, they opened that to anybody who wanted to have coaching. I facilitated the executive team meetings as well as other teams within the company, ran focus groups for them, as well as identifying issues that they saw as needing to resolve conflict. And then a particular thing, of course, once they'd employed managers from other areas, I mediated a particular, I suppose, conflict, and that was resolved to their satisfaction.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. They were lucky to have you, Joyce, in my view. And what kind of differences are you seeing now that we've had 2 years of employees being locked away all by themselves in various different habitats?
Well, actually, to be honest, I felt I was lucky to have them as a client, because what I find very important is, like with this area of change, it's sort of a individual change as well as organizational change. It's important to have people ready and willing to change, because it's not that easy necessarily. So what I feel I've noticed, of course, like with many businesses, the impact of the pandemic, in a good way, it's allowed me to expand geographically through video conferencing. And one example here is I've had a client who's sponsored by the Church of Scotland. Of course, I'm based here, and the individual had been signed off by their doctor through stress, which was caused by the pandemic and the particular church that he was ministering to. And as a result of that, after 3 to 4 months now, he has been signed to be able to return back to work. But again, the Synod has recognised that this should be a phased return to work. So again, paying very much attention to the mental health of their person.
Well, that's good to hear, Joyce, that you're affecting so much positive change on people. I wanted to come back now to what it's been like for you to be involved with West London Business, and what it's meant to you to be a part of our family for such a long time.
That's a very interesting question, and I got often been asked that in the early stages, because of being a micro business, and initially with the Chamber of Commerce. Then really I was part of the shadow board when we met with the corporate part of what is now part of West London Business. And put in a very simplistic way, it has given me insights that I've been able to apply in various roles, from attending the networking events, leading the HR network, and as a non-executive member of the board. West London Business is, I think, a great melting pot for hearing the voices of West London businesses that embrace the corporates, SMEs, social enterprise, which I think is fantastic.
Well, Joyce, thank you for those kind words. I'm glad that West London Business is delivering what it should do for our SMEs and corporate members. I just wanted to delve a little bit further, if you don't mind, into what Selfsense does differently in an incredibly competitive market, and how you help your businesses and clients.
Well, as I've said really many times, we all like quotes, and one of the many quotes attributed to Albert Einstein that resonates with me and my coaching is, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used that created them." So for me, I'm convinced that the clients I work with, Selfsense has been very much there to help the leadership team and individuals to change their thinking. That's putting it really very simply. Of course, it's more complex than that. However, related to the examples I gave before, this changing thinking comes from helping people who are willing, again, to raise their awareness. And to me, part of their awareness is approach, their thinking style, how they feel about situations, and for them to acknowledge that area, their communication skills and how they collaborate or found that difficult. And by sharing that, then for them to be able to appreciate, and that's talk about and realize, reflect on individually or as a team, on the pros and cons, and therefore find a resolution that is sustainable.
And I suppose at its very core, Selfsense works on trust and
Yes.
on the relationship that you build with your clients, which I can say has been my experience of working with you, Joyce.
Well, thank you very much. So certainly for me, self-sense is at the heart, and self-sense being individuals having a sense of who they are, but it's not in isolation. Who we are is influenced by other people and what they see of us. But the self-sense is about being able to be grounded with that and be aware of how we see the world is influenced about our sort of attitudes, beliefs, and the resources, the personal resources we have around humour and other things that often we take for granted about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes.
So how can people get in touch with you, Joyce? They want to have a quick chat with you about what Selfsense can do for them.
Well, certainly for the quick chat, it would be reaching me directly at Joyce at Selfsense. Otherwise, before that, if they're sort of interested in learning a little bit more, it would be looking at the website in order to find out the benefits. So visiting selfsense.com.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for your time and for joining me today. It's been great to hear about the story of Selfsense and how it has grown and changed. That's all for this edition of our Company Spotlight. I'll be back soon exploring the story of another West London business. In the meantime, if you're interested in finding out more about West London business and how being a member can benefit you, visit westlondon.com. Or you can drop me an email directly to discuss how we can help develop your West London story. You can reach me at amelia.grant@westlondon.com. For now, thank you for listening and have a lovely day.